Hi, I'm Rachel Lancaster, and this is the Magnificent Midlife podcast. This is where we celebrate women in midlife and beyond. We challenge the status quo and bash those negative stereotypes about being an older woman. We're not over the hill at 40, 50, 60. We're just getting started, and the world needs us now more than ever. I'll be talking all things midlife, about issues that matter, and sharing fabulous stories of amazing women doing very cool stuff. Now's our time. My guest today is Susan Saunders, and she is the co-author of the best-selling book, The Age Well Project, and author of her latest book, The Age Well Plan, which is a blueprint for how to age well. I'm terribly excited to have Susan on the podcast today because The Age Well Project is the book I wish I'd written, and I just love it so much. There is so much wonderfulness in there. So, Susan, it's fantastic to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for asking me. I'm really excited to talk to you.
There's just so much goodness in your two books, and I think they should actually be required reading for anybody that wants to age well. But I know that your determination to personally age well grew out of what happened in your own life. So can we start there? Tell us about that.
Yes, of course. So my kind of journey, as it were, to aging well started actually when I was in my mid-30s, which is pretty young. I had a toddler and a newborn. I was working full-time with a very demanding career and a husband and a house. And my mother was diagnosed with dementia, severe dementia, is what I was told. And so I became a carer as well. And I'm an only child. And my dad died a long time ago. There was nobody else to sort of take on this. So I suddenly had this huge, not burden is the wrong word, but a huge juggle and huge responsibility to be a carer while raising really young children at a time when most of my friends were kind of saying, oh, leaving the kids with mum and going away for the weekend. You know, I'd be leaving my kids with my husband and going to care for my mother at the weekend. And you know, that was a hell of a shock and a hell of a lot to take on. And what made it more kind of poignant was that as a teenager, I had watched my mum care for her mums who also had dementia. So I could sort of see this pattern. And with two daughters myself, I was really starting to think, I don't want this pattern to continue. If there is anything I can do, and the caveat always is that, you know, if the bullet's got our number on it, there may not be that much we can do, but we can make a huge difference to how we age with lifestyle changes. And so I started to read and research very simple things that I could do and just try and make sense of all those newspaper headlines that you read that say, don't drink coffee, it will kill you. Drink coffee, it will save you from dementia. And just trying to find a way through a kind of middle path through all that made sense for me as a working mum without much time and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So that was the start of what became the Age Well Project. And then I was talking a lot with my friend Annabelle, who I'd met because our younger daughters were at nursery together. And she had sort of similar concerns, similar interests. We were both very interested in cooking and food, and both had family histories of age-related chronic illness. And this was actually now 7 years ago, said, why don't we start a blog? And so we started a blog, I mean, really for us, really to keep us accountable for what we were doing. And then, you know, we put it on Facebook and told friends, and friends told friends. And, you know, it sort of started to grow quite quickly. And we were featured in the Telegraph quite early on. And it just started to grow. And from that came the book of the Age Well Project, which, as you said, we wrote together a couple of years ago. And then, oh no, more than that now, so 3-4 years ago. So, and while I was writing that, I was thinking, I want to do more. I want to do more to help people stay on track and create their own age well projects. So I qualified as a health coach. And so that's now what I do, coaching individuals and groups and webinars and things like that, sort of on my own. And that led to the book that came out in the autumn, The Age Well Plan, which is putting it in practice. So six weeks focusing on key areas of your life to kind of to get on track to help you age well.
And there's so much in both of the books, and it touches on so many different areas. So I know today we're going to take a look at those 6 areas that you've worked out as being what we need to focus on if we want to age well. So I guess we're going to start with how to plan, because that is where we start. Is that right?
It's all about planning. It's all about making time and setting an intention to age well. So where we start is by working out our sense of purpose and why we want to age well. Because I think once you have an understanding of why you're doing this, it's easier to stay on track. It's one thing thinking I should probably eat more vegetables, but it's another thing if you've really kind of thought through what is this for you, what do you want to get out of it. Purpose drives us to create a satisfying future and helps us get the most from what we achieve, and actually having a sense of purpose helps us to age well. A study published a couple of years ago found that people who had the strongest sense of purpose, what got them up in the morning, had decreased mortality rates and better heart health. So that it doesn't just keep us on track, it actually helps us to age well itself. So we start by creating the mindset really, and thinking about what we want our life to look like in 30, 40, 50 years time. What is in it? What's our life going to be like? What's in it? Rachel, what is your sense of purpose? What do you want your life to be like? How do you want to feel? How do you want it to be?
Well, I'll share actually why I am so fascinated by your book and why I wish I'd written it. Sod it, I didn't write it. I watched my father have the last 10 years of his life was just awful. It was awful for him. It was awful for us. Probably the last 20 years of his life, he did not look after himself at all. I suppose it was partly a generation, but it partly wasn't, because I remember his father, my grandfather, was absolutely committed to staying active, and he would garden and he would do his exercises every morning. Well, my father sat down in a chair at 55, and by 75 he was dead. And the last 10 years, he didn't leave the house because he wasn't mobile, and he had this condition called cerebellar ataxia. And it was almost like that gave him an excuse to not do anything, because he had a label then. He had, oh, I've got this. Whereas I personally believe that he got that because of the way he lived his life. So, I don't have anything like, the threat of dementia hanging over me, which I can only imagine must be really difficult for you. But I have that constantly in my head that, I do not want to age as my father aged, because it was a waste, such a waste.
Yes, absolutely. 55, 65, 75, it's not old. We can do so much with our lives. We can be climbing Everest at 75. There's so many options if you start with the basis of good health, and as much as you can. Of course, there are conditions which we're more likely to get, and it is harder as we get older to stay well. We all know that, but there's a lot we can do, and I think by setting an intention and by doing the best we can, we make everything so much better. We really do.
So what would you like to, where are we going to go next? Are we going to talk? I know a big proponent of diet and how important that is, and I know that is very much part of where you come from, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. When we started the Age Well project, it was actually called Kale and Cocoa. And I always say that my Age Well project started in the kitchen, and that we started because we liked cooking healthy food. And what was really interesting for me as we sort of really started to dig into the research was that I realized it wasn't just about healthy eating. There were so many other things that we need to do in order to age well. But it certainly for me, it did start in the kitchen. And I think if you're eating well to age well, that's kind of that's the foundation. That's what you can build on, and everything else can flow from that. But what I would say is people get so het up about grams of protein or carbohydrate or this or that, or you've got to be keto, or you've got to be vegan, or if you're not, you will age really badly. And I find that quite frustrating because I don't think any of the evidence for those things is quite compelling enough. You might have a specific condition that means that a very, very low carb diet is better for you. Or you might have ethical reasons to be vegan. Yes, of course. But for most of us, the answer is sort of somewhere in between, making sure that we eat a lot of plants, a lot of vegetables. Half our plate should be vegetables, that we're eating healthy fats, that we're eating whole grains, keeping our diets low in sugar as opposed to really ultra low in carbs, but getting fibre and nutrients that we need from carbohydrate. Oily fish, I think, is really important for aging, really important for brain health. But it's not like there's a strict diet. I don't like diets. I think diets are like being in prison. And as soon as you're kind of released, it's really difficult to go straight. You've lost your parameters. And I think what's really important when you're thinking about aging well and thinking about what's my future going to be like, that you kind of create a way of eating that works for you and that will help you age well without being, I've got to follow this exact diet and my life will fall apart if I don't. But I would say one really key thing is to make sure that you get enough fibre. There was a study done in Australia a few years ago which looked at successful agers, the people who were aging, were going into the later stages of their life with the lowest incidence of chronic conditions, illness, brain issues, etc. And it kind of looked at the Venn diagram of all their different lifestyles and what did they all do and where was the point of overlap. And the point of overlap was the ones who were eating the most fibre were the most successful agers. So that's really interesting.
Where do we get fibre from? Because I don't think in the West we're very good at knowing where we get fibre from.
No, so we get fibre from starchy carbohydrates. We get fibre from vegetables. All vegetables contain fibre, and fruits. Starchy whole grain carbohydrates, so whole wheat. I really like all those kind of crazy sounding grains like freekeh and farro. Pearl barley is another one. What else then? Buckwheat. Not a huge portion. We don't need huge portions, but we should be looking to get 25 to 30 grams of fibre a day. I think the average in the UK is about 18 grams, so we're kind of a bit low. And when we were writing the Age Well project, I kept a fibre diary, which is like the world's most boring diary. But it was interesting from what it was trying to do, which was show me how much fibre I was actually eating. And it was quite hard to get to where I should be. so I ate quite a lot of beans and pulses. Oats are really, really great. And I think probably why fibre is so good is because our gut microbiota ferment the fibre, and the what comes from that fermentation process are short chain fatty acids, which are really important for brain health. They're really important in terms of mood. So it's not just about aging, it's about how we feel today. And they help dampen inflammation, which builds up in our bodies as we get older. So the number one thing we want to do is kind of reduce that low grade kind of chronic inflammation, which makes our bodies less efficient. So grains, oats, beans, fruits, really humble foods are really, really good for us, which makes me really happy. Like onions and leeks and lentils, things like cans of beans, and which makes me really happy because I think there's so much kind of guff talked about superfoods and really, really expensive supplements and things that we should be putting into smoothies. Or I've got nothing against smoothies, I like smoothies, but it's all the kind of thing, you must have this, you must have that, you must buy this really expensive mushroom powder or whatever. Actually, eating onions and leeks and beans is so cheap and easy. It's really good for you. So I try not to get carried away with the kind of superfood thing. I mean, it's quite fun if you want to go and buy something, fine, but it's not necessary for aging well.
And there's also that narrative, isn't there, that good food has to be expensive, or organic is expensive or whatever. And I know you talk about I'd love to touch on this, the dirty 10 and the clean 15, the ones that have the pesticides, and why it's important to buy organic if we can. But there's an awful lot of pretty cheap foodstuffs out there that we can have and that don't need to be organic, and actually those lists enable us to work out which ones do and which ones don't. So it doesn't, to have the good diet, to have the good age well diet, doesn't have to be expensive. And one of the top tips is not fibre, but I've now dug out the sardines that have been in my cupboard for ages, and I'm now having sardines on toast, on wholemeal toast, and it's cheap, it's easy, and it's really good for me.
Sardines are brilliant, and as you say, they're so cheap. They're one of our favourite age well foods, and they're packed with they're oily fish, so they have these fatty acids which are so important for our brain, and you really go straight to our brains and feed them. And they're so cheap. And if you buy the really cheap ones with the bones in, that's calcium. You're literally eating bone to feed your bone, and they're just a bit crunchy, you don't notice them. So sardines are great. I think they're the sort of basis of all my lunches, really, are kind of greens, beans and sardines.
And it rhymes, greens, beans, sardines.
Which is really easy to remember.
I'm going to remember that.
Yeah. So, I'm finding some lockdown lunches really hard. It's boring. I haven't really got time to stop. So at least if I've got those sort of things that I can think of, it's quite easy to pull together a lunch.
So if you could just tell us a little bit about the the dirty 10 and the clean 15.
Dirty dozen.
Dirty dozen, sorry.
It's really interesting. Here in the UK, the government sets maximum residue levels on individual pesticides, but doesn't on the way that they all kind of add up. So you can have almost maximum residue levels on multiple pesticides in a food, and it still passes government regulations. So I wasn't aware of that until I started researching the Age Well plan. So that was a really sort of interesting thing to discover. And some foods just have 6 or 7 different pesticides in them. And washing isn't in either. Oh, wash your apple, it's fine. But actually, these pesticides are systemic. So they're grown right into the fruit or vegetables. So that's just something to be aware of, that things like pears, grapefruits, have multiple different pesticide residues in them. And so buying organic of those, oranges, actually citrus, strawberries, where you can, is really worth doing. And then other fruits and vegetables, beetroot, for example, leeks, have very low levels of pesticides. So they're kind of fine if they're not organic. And actually, one thing I did discover researching the book was that rice, the rice that's imported into the UK, tends to have multiple pesticides in it. So I now buy organic rice, which isn't that much more than non-organic rice.
It's fascinating, I think, when you start delving into it as you have done, because most of us, we don't know these things. And it isn't until they're pointed out, which is why I was so keen to have you on the podcast, that, we start to think about these things, and we start to think about the overall buildup of toxins. And I know, as you mention elsewhere in the books, about, the buildup of toxins in our personal products and in our cleaning products and all of that, which we'll cover shortly. But it's the cumulative effect of the toxins everywhere, isn't it? And I'll put in the show notes where people can print out the lists of the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15.
Yes.
You recommend putting them on the fridge, don't you? So that people can actually remember, when they're going out shopping.
Yeah, exactly. If you've got somewhere where you kind of write your shopping lists, or it's worth, or note on your phone or something, it's worth just having that to hand to refer to.
Brilliant idea, actually, because I have an online shopping list on my phone, and I could just put an O for organic next to the thing, couldn't I? And it's going to keep occurring. I like that idea.
Yeah, good idea. Good thinking. Yes. And it's the Pesticide Action Network UK that logs all this stuff. And
it's EWG in the US, I think, for my US list.
Although we have slightly different pesticides, obviously, and fruit and veg. And I don't know how it's going to change with Brexit. That's probably something to think about, actually, how that we're no longer covered by European regulations. I don't think I should look into that.
Something to bear in mind. Yes, we might have to go more organic. Well, never mind. So what else? Obviously, let's diet and food. When I say diet, I don't mean a restricted diet. I mean just the food that we eat, but massively important.
Yes, I think it's the bedrock, it's the foundation, and also it's the thing everybody can get a grip on. We all have to eat several times a day, and we all know that we need to do something. So I think it's the thing we get the most questions about. I'm doing a course on it at the moment. It's the question my one-to-one clients always want to know about first. What do we eat?
And what else do we need to be doing to age well?
Well, it's not rocket science to say that we need to keep moving or get moving if we're not moving. If exercising means we age better, it's really simple. And at the moment, we've been in lockdown for almost a year. A lot of us have lost movement from our lives. I'm not running around London nearly, well, not at all, really. A lot of us have lost movement, and it's sort of harder to get motivated to get out. We're not dashing around in the same way, but you don't have to do that much. It's really just about getting breathless and stressing our bodies in a good way. Stress, work stress, that kind of chronic stress is bad for us, but stressing our bodies by pushing them to exercise a little harder than we might think is enough, just pushing ourselves a little bit further, pushes our body into repair mode. And that is exactly what we need as we get older. We're aging at a cellular level. It's not just wrinkles and grey hair. It is, every cell in our body is kind of going through this process of aging, and we want to push our bodies into repair mode. We want our DNA, we want our chromosomes, our telomeres, which are the little tips on the end of our chromosomes, which stop them from fraying. We want them to be strong and long. And one of the things that does that is exercising, and just exercising with a little more intensity than we would do normally, which is great. I mean, it's another thing, it's like dieting. You don't have to do a specific rigid thing. What you just need to think about is, well, how do I just go a little bit harder? How do I just get a little bit breathless? So if your fitness level is a walk in the park, it's walking a little bit faster. If you're doing high intensity weight circuits, what can you push yourself to do? And it's high intensity interval training. You don't have to do it for very long. You just 20 seconds, you're pushing yourself a little faster for 20 seconds, and then going back to a more leisurely pace that suits you, is enough to kind of get that kind of repair system going, keeping our telomeres long, so it doesn't have to be too much, and it can be whatever you like, whether that's swim. I can't swim at the moment, but soon we'll be able to swim again, or go to the gym, or whatever it is, cycling or running, or just walking, whatever it is. It's just going a little bit harder for a short amount of time, back to normal a little bit harder.
What I love about the plan, particularly the book, is that these things are so easy to implement when you've been told. So, I've been starting to try and do that high interval training when I'm running. So this morning, I'm a bit of a plodder rather than a runner, but I tried to speed it up a bit. When I was warmed up, I was nicely warmed up, and I speeded up, and I think you suggested just even 20 seconds, and I did it for 20 seconds, and then I went back to my regular pace, and I felt really good at the end of it. I thought, I've put in a bit more effort, and yeah, that's good. So it has an immediate impact on my sense of well-being, that I'm, I suppose, taking a bit of control as well, and making an effort.
Yes, exactly. You're making a conscious decision to do something positive. So that of itself, is really, really good. And yes, and it doesn't have to interrupt your day. You don't have to go out and buy tons of weights or anything. It's just about, I'm going to run a bit harder and count to 20, or I'll run a bit harder to the third lamppost, or whatever sort of comes easy, most easily. But yeah, that's sort of that's all it takes. And it's crazy that we don't know this stuff, and it's not made readily available. And I sort of think there should be a leaflet every time you go to your GPs that says these are the 6 things you need to do. But it doesn't work like that. So we've got the book.
I agree. Maybe that's a campaign you need to start, because honestly, we get invited, to go for mammograms when we turn 50, but nobody sends us the list of, the things we can be doing to age well and keep us out of hospital, so that we're not putting pressure on our health service. That would be a good thing to have, wouldn't it? Really?
Yeah. Yes. It's just whether people would follow it. You need a level of motivation to start with, I think. But
I suppose so.
And yes, the NHS is quite busy at the moment. I suppose we have to
let
them do what it needs to do, and we'll try and age well ourselves.
Yeah, but I love the other tip you have about fidgeting. I thought that is so powerful. And actually, a friend of mine told me a couple of years ago, she said, don't sit on the sofa when you're watching telly or when you're anything. Sit on the floor, because then you'll get uncomfortable and you'll start fidgeting. So in fact, that's what I do. I sit on the floor now, and sometimes I sit on my little yoga cushion, but I try not to sit on the sofa too much, because I know that then I don't move.
Yes, that's really true. And yes, fidgeting. Women who fidget use as much to burn up as many calories and have it has as many health benefits as women who are exercising and then just stopping. That's the thing. We are so sedentary, and again, I think lockdown has really increased that. So anything that we can do, say fidgeting, or actually, you and I should both be standing up to record
I
this
am.
podcast. Are you? Oh no!
I am.
I feel really bad now. God, I'm slacking. I'm slacking. Okay, I'm gonna fidget.
We can have a fidget break. We can have a wriggle break.
No. Oh no! Oh no!
Yeah, and I said on another podcast, I'll be repeating myself for my listeners, but for your benefit, I have a treadmill under my standing desk as well. So I could be walking, but then people, if they're on camera with me, they say it makes them feel a bit seasick. So I've stopped doing that.
That would be a bit weird. Annabelle's got a walking desk, but I haven't invested. But no, she loves it. But it's movement. It's when I'm on the phone, I'm always standing up, stretching, and the times when I've worked in offices, I'm always kind of stretching or walking around. Just walking around, go and talk to people rather than send them an email because they're halfway across the office.
And you put your weights next to the kettle, don't you?
Yes.
I love. There's so many brilliant tips in these books,
Yes.
honestly, folks.
Have weights next to the kettle or in the bathroom. Stand on one leg when you're cleaning your teeth because that really helps balance. Yes, just keep moving. Whatever it is that will keep you moving. Get a dog. Whatever it is that keeps you moving. It doesn't have to be. Again, we've sort of fetishized exercise, that it has to be this really difficult, expensive thing that we go to a place to do, and it shouldn't be. It should be a much more natural kind of thing. We should be moving all the time. You think about our foremothers who would have been turning mangles and pounding butter and all that kind of stuff. We've lost all that, so we have to find it elsewhere. I mean, I'm quite glad I don't have to turn a mangle, but yeah, I'm conscious that I need movement elsewhere in my life.
Yeah. So what next?
Okay, the next one is sleep. The third section in the plan is sleep, and it was something that was quite a revelation to me when we started to research the project, was the importance of sleep as we age, and also sort of how sleep just kind of disappears as we get to midlife. I'm sure you've found this, and many of your listeners have, that this sort of thing we are so used to having just becomes very elusive, and it becomes elusive at the time we need it most, because when we go into deep sleep, our brains go into this incredible cleaning program, which I just love. When we're in deep sleep, our brains shrink by, I think, God, was it 40%? 60%, up to 60%. They actually, our brain cells shrink, and then the microglia, which are a type of immune cell, kind of literally come out with brooms and sweep all the time. I mean, not literally brooms, but they come out and they sweep between the brain cells to get rid of all the accumulated toxins, which can build up, and the build-up of amyloid, which when that becomes plaques, is part of the whole Alzheimer's process. Literally, our brains have this system where that can all be cleaned out. I mean, imagine if you're cleaning your house and all your furniture shrunk by 60%, how much easier it would be to get around it. But that only happens in our brains in deep sleep. So we have to do what we can to maximize our sleep. And I always say that sleeping well starts in the morning. It's not something that we suddenly think about at night. Oh God, it's 11 o'clock. I've got to throw myself into bed. Actually, we need to start in the morning, and that the really simple thing is getting daylight in the morning, getting the strong blue light that we need, that sets our circadian rhythms, that tells us it's morning now. We're literally starting the clock. Okay, we're seeing all this daylight. Off we go. The day is starting. It's so easy just not to get that. I'm conscious I haven't been outside. Actually, I've been in the garden for a few minutes, but haven't really been outside today. So that is not good. I have not set myself up for a good night's sleep. So setting our clocks off is really important. As we get into midlife, our bodies start, and beyond, our bodies start to create a second circadian clock, which kind of knocks the first out, which is really unhelpful. And that's why our sleep patterns go awry. But if we can anchor our clocks as much as possible in the morning, that means that by the time we get to evening, our body's thinking, oh yeah, we started this morning. Yeah, we know where morning started. Right, okay, it's time to start. It's time to start winding down, getting ready for bed. And the other thing I'm very religious about doing, and so easy with a phone again, is setting an alarm at night. I have an alarm that goes off at 9:30 p.m. and that's my warning that I need to get off my screens, need to start winding down, because our screens give us blue light and our bodies think, oh, it's daytime, let's keep going, let's keep awake. And then I have a second alarm that goes off at 10, and that is right to get ready for bed, read a book, go through the wind down procedure. So that that just makes me more likely to do it, because something's pinging at me, even though I'm putting it in another room when I go to bed. At least it's set that alarm off. So again, it's a really simple thing. It's about routine, it's about rhythm, it's just about doing those things every single day.
Well, we know that babies need a sleep routine, but we seem to forget that concept as we go through life, don't we?
Yes, exactly. And we need routine more as we get older, because our clocks are going awry. We're not like teenagers. I've got a 17-year-old and a 20-year-old, and they can just throw themselves into bed at 3 a.m. and then wake up at lunchtime, and they're absolutely fine. That's fine. I just could not begin to do that. We need to sort of set a routine and not get up super early during the week and then lie in during the weekend. It needs to be a more regular pattern.
And we're always on, aren't we? We're always wired, we're always connected, we're always interacting with technology, and that learning, again, relearning, I suppose, or unlearning probably, to be able to switch off towards the end of the day. I love that you've got that routine set, and you're reminding yourself to do it. You're being very conscious about it, aren't you?
It's setting an intention to do that, to make that work. I mean, so obviously sometimes it goes a bit awry, but it's having the intention and being aware of it every day.
And then I know your next section is how to be. What does that mean?
It's about acknowledging that aging well isn't just physical. A lot of it comes down to how we are in the world, our engagement, staying positive about aging, interaction. Social interaction makes a huge difference to how we age. And again, we've had this year where social interaction has been really difficult. And I think it's really important that we don't lose track of that. We're social animals. We develop to work as a tribe. You can see in our brains that positive interaction has a positive impact on our brain health. The amygdala, the area of our brain that processes memory, is stimulated by the company of others. And I think that comes down to the feeling of safety that our forebears who roamed the savannah had when they were with the tribe. Like, you're not going to be picked off by a wild animal, a wildebeest or whatever, if you're with your tribe, but you might be if you're alone. So we're hardwired to seek the company of others. And it really makes a difference to how we age. And at the moment, still, that's quite difficult. Things, certainly here in the UK, will start to open up, but it's just something to be aware of. And one of the ways we can sort of get the sort of positives that we get from interaction without having to interact is to feel gratitude, to express gratitude. And we can do that by ourselves, either with our families around the table, talking about things that we feel grateful for that happened during the day, or just when we're out doing our morning walk, getting all that blue light first thing in the morning, looking at nice things, positive things, noticing them with intention. And that could be, a cute cat or a child, or the blossom on the trees, or daffodils or crocuses coming out at the moment. And if we notice them, if we're aware of them, then that kind of locks the gratitude into our brain, and that has a really positive impact.
And does that link in as well to being more mindful?
Yes, it's about awareness of what we're doing and how we're feeling, and not letting negative thoughts kind of take over, and you're finding practical ways of, if you're feeling negative, you go out and you start thinking about, oh, that's a really nicely painted house, or that sort of made me smile, or it's sunny. Actually, I think it sounds so basic, but consciously doing that sort of locks it into our brains and has a positive effect.
And I know you do talk about meditation in the books as well, don't you? The power of meditation.
Yes, meditation is so powerful, and that's something which I came to through the Age Well Project, and something which I now practice most days. And not only does it just make us feel better because you're calmer and more in control of your thoughts, but also it has been found to have a practical, it actually has an impact on how we age at a cellular level. Long-term meditators have longer telomeres, those caps on the end of our chromosomes that hold our DNA together and stop it getting damaged. Meditators have longer telomeres, which, I mean, it's just extraordinary, really. That
it is extraordinary.
that it just reaches right down into every single cell. And I also love the fact that this research was ever done in the first place. The people who, like Elisa Epel, who actually worked out what was going on with telomeres, and how when they became degraded, that was aging us. They went to a meditation retreat in Colorado for 3 months and set up all their telomere testing kit and tested the meditators.
It's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, this is why I'm blown away by how much we need to know and how much we usually don't know. But it ties in, doesn't it? Because if you think about it, stress, we know stress is bad for our health, and stress is going to make us age more quickly as well, because it's bad for our health, but also just generally it's not good for us. But then if we're prioritizing sleep, well, meditation can have that kind of brain cleansing function during the day, can't it, in a kind of concentrated, accelerated way? So that all ties in, that it's reducing the stress, it's providing some rest, and therefore it's it's going to impact how we age. It does all connect, doesn't it?
Yes, exactly. Yes, it's sort of resting our brains essentially, and taking us away from those stressful lives, even if it's for a short time.
So what else? Is there anything else that you need to impart to my listeners?
So I think my final stage, or my final sort of pillar from the Age Well plan is thinking about how we live, and what our kind of age well lives are like, and making our homes as age well as possible. We've all spent so much time at home in the last year, and our homes aren't always quite the safe havens that we hope that they will be. We can sometimes find ourselves in a kind of toxic combination of chemicals at home, because we've got air coming in from outside, which it can be polluted. And then inside our homes, if we're burning fuels or candles, if we have emissions from building materials, soft furnishings, or our household cleaning products, they all build up. And it's just something to be conscious of. On a daily basis, we spray chemicals around our homes. And particularly, again, in the last year, we've really been conscious about cleaning and hand washing and sanitizing and all that sort of thing, which is obviously really important so we don't get COVID. But it's also something we should be aware of in terms of the number of chemicals and pollutants we're exposed to on a daily basis. And it's like the the chemicals in fruit and vegetables we were talking about earlier, that none of us really know what our threshold is and how we're going to be impacted by the sort of cocktail of chemicals that we're exposed to. We're all different, and what affects you might not affect me, or vice versa. And I live on a main road and under the flight path into Heathrow, so I am conscious that I'm exposed to a lot of pollution. So therefore, I may be less tolerant to the chemicals in cleaning products, for example, than someone who lives in the middle of the countryside. But it's really difficult to work that out. But we know that exposure to pollution increases dementia risk. We know that heavy exposure to cleaning products increases the risk of lung health issues. So it's just something to be aware of. And for the Age Well plan, I started, when I was researching, I started making my own cleaning products, which was really fun actually, and really satisfying. And so I've got a sort of simple kit of ingredients that I use to make my own products now, things like household vinegar, bicarbonate of soda, so a product called Dr. Bronner's liquid soap. And in the back of the Age Well plan, there are recipes, my recipes for making my cleaning products. So I think it's worth at least having a think about the chemicals that you're exposing yourself to in your home, even if at the moment you don't want to reduce the number of cleaning products or sanitizing products you're using, because obviously we're still in a pandemic.
But then again, the advice is soap is enough. Soap is enough to get rid of the virus. We don't have to have hand sanitizers, other than that it's easier when we're going out because we don't have the water to use the soap. But within the home, we've got the water, so we don't have to do that, do we? And I think it's also that trade-off, isn't it, between being clean but not putting so much toxicity stress on our immune systems, because that can compromise them as well, can't it? And then so what's more important? It's really tricky getting that balance.
Yes, it is tricky getting the balance, and it's tricky getting the balance particularly at the moment. But I think it's something to be conscious of, and what you feel comfortable with. There's no point saying, right, I'm going to throw out all my cleaning products and just use bicarbonate of soda and vinegar, if you're then going to feel that you're not clean enough. But then if you load up with too many chemical products, you could have an impact on your health. So it's striking that balance. But I think it's something that's worth exploring, and it's one of the things which I didn't expect to find linked to aging well. But when I started to dig into the research, I realized that it was.
The one thing I was sad when I was doing my research before talking to you is I've recently got myself into scented candles, and I think they're quite natural. And then I was reading in the book and I was like, oh, maybe I can't have scented candles after all. So I was like, oh.
Well, it depends. It depends on the candles. It depends on the on where you're burning them and how exposed you are to them, and again, what else you're using. If you're using quite kind of low tox cleaning products and you have a scented candle, then that's sort of fine. If you're spraying your entire house down every day, then
don't have the scented candle.
It's probably be flammable for a start. But also, unfortunately, like all these things, the better quality candles are the ones which give off less of these volatile organic compounds, which can impact lung health. But beeswax candles are very, very nice and clean, and just sort of smell of honey. And also, make sure it's a well ventilated space. You open doors or windows. Or
this is my little office, so I think I'm going to invest in a diffuser now.
Yes,
was your advice.
That's the other thing too.
Use
a diffuser, and then also you're not getting the soot and that kind of thing. Yeah. It can still smell nice.
Yeah, it can still smell nice. Well, this has been absolutely fascinating. Just amazing. Thank you. So what are your parting thoughts or your very, very best advice that you want to pull out? If people are going to do one thing, what are they going to do? Or I suppose there isn't one thing. There's so much, isn't there?
I would say the most important thing is to believe that you can change the way you age. It's not set in stone. As I said at the beginning, some of us have got a bullet with our name on it, but we can do so much. And it doesn't take a lot to make a huge difference. But believing that we can change the way we age is the most important thing.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Magnificent Midlife Podcast. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, share it, and leave me a review wherever you're listening. It really helps me get the message out. You can find out more information about this episode in the show notes at magnificentmidlife.com. That's also where you'll find strategies, support, and resources to help make your midlife magnificent. Get clarity on how to make the most of your next chapter. Help me change the world, one magnificent midlife woman at a time.